Alright guys, we are going to make what's called a contact sheet, which actually is something that came out from the darkroom and a process of taking your actual film from your camera, cutting it into strips, and putting it into a negative sleeve that kind of looks like a sheet protector, and putting in what was called a contact printer. So you're exposing your negatives to a piece of photo paper, and you get these tiny little images made from the tiny negatives, and it'll give you a little bit of a tiny picture sample of what your pictures would look like if you actually decided to go through the whole process of developing each of those negatives. So what we're going to do is go to our photo folder and go into the computer technology folder, and we're going to go and open up the folder that says label and contact sheet. So I already labeled these, and I also put in the three file types that we are going to make with our contact sheet. So I'm going to get rid of these. But what I did for each of these files was I right-clicked and said rename, and you just want to rename every one with your first and last name, _1, underscore the day's date. And I did this with each one, and I labeled these like 1, 2, 3, but in the future you'll actually label it with like what you were trying to go for. So like this is a bird's eye view versus this is a worm's eye view. So you'd be labeling things with the kind of things that you're going to be doing in class. So these are all labeled now, so I'm now ready to launch Photoshop and make my contact sheet. So I'm going to launch Photoshop by double clicking on the PS blue icon down here. If I hover over it, it says it's actually Photoshop. So I'm going to launch this. I actually was already working on some other exercises, so those are already up here. So I'm going to go to File, Automate, and Contact Sheet 2. I don't know what happened to 1. I've only seen 2. And I want to use a folder, folder of images to make my contact sheet. So I'm going to leave it as folder, not file. And where it says choose, I'm going to navigate to my desktop, to my photo folder, computer technology, and that folder that says label and contact sheet, and say open. And that's going to select that folder, and it's going to generate a contact sheet of those images in those folder. You might have to change the width to 8.5 and the height to 11. Sometimes it says 8 by 10. So it might be set to 8.5 by 11. You have to just double check. You want the resolution to be 300. And inside my folder there was 6 images. So I'm going to leave the columns at 2 and the rows at 3 because 2 times 3 is 6. Now if I had 15 pictures, I'd probably want to have 3 by 5. If I had 20 pictures, I would do 4 by 5. So you always just want to make sure that these two numbers multiply into as many pictures as there are in the actual folder. And just make sure that this down here, use file name as caption, is checked off, and it will actually label each picture with what I labeled it. So I'm going to hit OK, and you're going to see it process. You might see it flash a little bit. You'll see this tab that's automatically created. It's generating a document based on the photos that are in that folder. And look at how nicely these are proportioned in terms of the overall page. A lot of people are too lazy to change the columns and the rows, and then they'll get these tiny little pictures you could barely see. But now you also see it's labeled with what I actually labeled it with. So each one of these is labeled with my name and the name of the project. Now I'm going to save this file as 3 different file types. So the first one I'm going to do is File, Save As, and this one I'm going to leave as the format of a Photoshop file. And I'm going to name this my first and last name, underscore contact sheet, and then today's date. And it says .psd automatically because it's selected as format. As Photoshop. And I'm going to hit save and hit OK. I'm then going to go back and say File, Save As, and this time where it says Format, my name is still saved there, so I don't have to change anything, but where it says Format, I'm going to change it to JPEG. And notice the extension changes .jpg, and when I hit Save, it's going to say, you have some options here. How big of a file? Does it have to be under a certain amount of megabytes? So maybe it needs to be a little bit smaller because you're sending it, through mail or something like that. It's going to let you pick the quality, but notice that, the lower the quality, the smaller the file, but you also don't want it to be pixelated. So you're going to have to find out You know, you do want to keep it under, you know, the parameters of whatever you're uploading it to or sending it, those capabilities, but you also want to kind of keep it as big as possible. For us, I'm just going to leave it as a large file and say okay. And then one more time, File, Save As, and this time where it says Format, I'm going to change it to Photoshop PDF. So I'm going to select that one, and notice that now at the end it says .pdf, and hit Save. And OK, and then we'll see another kind of dialog window and say Save PDF, and yes. And then if I go to my photo folder, and I go to computer technology, and I go to label and contact sheet, I did not correctly save those 3 files. So I must have saved them somewhere else. I'm guessing that I accidentally saved them to crop. Yep, there they are. So I'm actually going to select these, and I'm going to copy these, and then I'm going to go back to label and contact sheet and right click and paste these 3 items, and I'm going to get rid of them from here. They weren't supposed to be in here. Just throw that in the trash. All right, so I have these 3 different file types. Now it says .psd, that means that it's a native file to Photoshop. Only somebody who has Photoshop on the computer can open this file. Now JPEG, if I double click this one, it will open in preview, and that is true of a PC or a Mac. So it's a universal image format that can be opened. And then usually .pdfs are going to be opened in Adobe Acrobat, and you can actually still have a little bit of editing capabilities so this is a universal document reader software. So that's why we save it as 3 different file types: the editable file, the compressed file, and then the document file. And that's how you make a contact sheet and save it in different file formats.